So as in all the suttas, this has to be seen in the context of dependent origination and Four Noble Truths. I won't review dependent origination again. We've done that the last few classes, but I will say, just to remind you, that it is from ignorance as a requisite condition comes fabrications, and from fabrications through the 12 link chain of dependencies comes all manner of confusion, deluded thinking, and ongoing suffering. The Buddha used the term five clinging aggregates to describe the ongoing personal experience of suffering, of disappointment, of unsatisfactory experiences arising from those fabrications. So it can truly be said that it is by clinging or attaching fabricated views of reality, corrupted views, perverted views of who we are in relation to the world we live in, that results in this manner of suffering. So this five clinging aggregates relates directly to the classes we just had on the 6 properties that define a person. They're completely impersonal. And they're completely ordinary. There's nothing extraordinary about the properties that describe a human being. The five clinging aggregates also relate to the Pali word for this, for the five clinging aggregates, was khandha, K-A-H-A-N-D-H-A, or skandha, the Sanskrit word, which simply means a heap. And it's meant to describe the human being, again, in that impersonal way. It's just a heap of these things that is in and of themselves of no true value. Another translation of khandha or skandha would be a trunk of a tree. And that relates directly to the description of that the Buddha used for awakening, or nibbana, which means to extinguish the fire of passion. And if you can think of a stump of a tree burning out, that's the idea of awakening. And so it relates to those things. And again, the Buddha's using common terms of his time. And now, 2,600 years later, I'm using a translation of that. But again, you hear me emphasize over and over again, it doesn't make any sense unless it's in the right context. And that's why I keep going back to that. And so people that listen to the Buddha mostly understood that he's teaching in this context. The Buddha was staying with the Evosians on the banks of the Ganges River. He addressed those assembled. Friends, suppose that a large glob of foam were floating down the river, and a person with good eyesight saw it and clearly examined it. To them it would appear empty, void, without any substance. For what substance could there be in a glob of foam? In the same way, any practitioner well versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any form that is past, future, or present, any form that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. That line there, past, present, future, or internal, external, we talked about that last week. In relation to the 6 properties that make up a person, the internal, external property is still just one property. Remember that? And so when we're referring to the external property, it's that external property refers to attempting to establish the self in some non-physical or imaginary realm. But it all arises from within this property. And in this case, it arises from a misunderstanding of who and what we are. And even that line, common or extraordinary. So even during the Buddhist time, and certainly during our time, we want to use our imagination to establish ourselves in our imagination as something extraordinary. And we do it all the time. Something, and it relates directly to the suttas on becoming. We want to create something in our minds that is using the Buddha's words, something other than self, meaning what we actually are. Remember, the Buddha never said there's no such thing as a self. He simply said that because of a fabricated view, the views we're holding of a self don't constitute a self. Let go of the views, not let go of the self. To those well-versed in the Dhamma, it would appear empty, void, without any substance. For what substance could there be in form that is constantly changing? So that points directly to the problem of eye-making and how we want to establish a substantial and permanent self in something that in and of itself can't support it. It's impermanent. Even a physical body, we don't accept the fact that this body that we have is temporary. And in this body is this mind that is interpreting the world around it. When that interpretation is done through fabrications, everything that is processed now through this body is a fabricated view, and it's prone to ongoing disappointing experiences and prone to ongoing stress. Notice the relationship, and this is kind of where I've been hoping to go these last couple of months and even this whole year. Notice the relationship to the Buddha's words here, internal, external. The concentration and refined mindfulness that the Buddha teaches finally unites the mind and the body and keeps it there. That's where peace and calm abide. That's where we are stress-free, when we are in our body. Stress arises when we are outside of our body, when we're stuck in the past or the future, or we're stuck in an imaginary plane of existence, such as, I don't know why I've been using this for the last couple of weeks, I'm the world's greatest baker. And once I decide I'm the world's greatest baker, I got to keep on baking a lot of really good stuff, don't I, to maintain that. I'm using kind of a silly example, but because I fabricated a view of myself that is not rooted in reality, I've applied something to this foam to make it real when it can't support it. But because I've decided that it's me, I am compulsed to continue to protect and defend that view. In any view we do, any imaginary view that we create of ourselves out of a fabricated mindset is always going to be prone to suffering this way, always prone to confusion and ongoing deluded thinking. Is that clear? Mm-hmm. So that's really the essence of what the Buddha is talking about, and using these 5 clinging aggregates to simply describe what we attach ourselves to allow ourselves to continue this fabrication, this fabrication. You could even look at it, and I think I mentioned this, I use this line in maybe the Truth of Happiness book, that we're playing a magic trick on ourselves. We just don't realize that we're the magician. You know, it's just one big illusion we're playing on ourselves. The Buddha often said that this living life from this fabricated view is like an illusion, but that's an important distinction between calling it like an illusion and an illusion, because an illusion means that there's nothing redeemable there. The Buddha's not teaching it. It is like an illusion. We've created a fabricated view. We've dropped a veil of ignorance over how we see ourselves in relation to the world. Now, suppose that in the rainy season, it is raining fat, heavy drops and a water bubble appears and disappears on the water. A person with good eyesight sees this and clearly examines it. The water bubble would appear empty, void, and without substance. For what substance could there be in a water bubble? In the same way, any practitioner well-versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any feeling that is past, future, or present, any feeling that is internal, external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well-versed in the Dhamma, it would appear empty, void, without substance. For what substance could there be in feelings that are constantly changing? But when we don't understand this, and we looked at form, now we're looking at feeling. How often do we describe ourselves to ourselves and to other people by how we're feeling? Think about that for
everybody asks you how you doing.
Yeah, and I mean that's become a defining thread of our society, and it's always reinforced, isn't it? How you feeling? My favorite mayor of all time. How am I doing, Ed Koch? How am I? And so at the end of the day, most of us, unless we have a Dhamma practice, we judge our day, the value of our day, by how we felt through the day. It was a bad day, it was a good day, it was, nothing really happened. And that's often even worse than having a bad day, isn't it? Because nothing happened. Where was I in it? There's no opportunity to establish my ego personality in it. And we do it constantly. In fact, we have to do it to maintain a fabricated view of reality. But it's like foam on the water. It's like a water bubble. There's nothing there. Now, suppose during the hot season, a mirage was shimmering. A person with good eyesight sees it and clearly examines it. The mirage would appear empty, void, and without substance. For what substance could there be in a mirage that is constantly changing? In the same way, any practitioner well-versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any perception that is past, future, or present, any perception that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well-versed in the Dhamma, it would appear empty, void, without substance. For what substance could there be in perceptions that are constantly changing? What did the Buddha teach all of us to observe and appropriately examine perceptions or feelings or form or the rest of these phenomena? I failed as a teacher.
Wait, no, it's just, I think your question, I don't really.
What? I'll ask
It's
it.
your question that's confusing.
Yeah. Very good. What did the
over everybody. Thanks.
what did the Buddha teach to appropriately examine, to observe and appropriately examine these different phenomena, in this case, perceptions?
What do you mean, like just noticing?
The Eightfold Path?
Hey, there we are. That's the purpose of the Eightfold Path, so that we can observe and appropriately examine what's occurring. And all of this, even though this might seem like it's focused externally, this is occurring in our mind, isn't it? It's our thinking that is doing this interpretation of form, feeling, perceptions, et cetera, et cetera. So if we're going to observe and appropriately examine this, we have to integrate the Eightfold Path. No, we don't have to. If we actually want to awaken, we do. And I'm just emphasizing the simple and direct nature of what the Buddha taught. There's nothing extraneous to this. There's nothing that we need to embellish this path. We don't have to chant endlessly. We don't have to bow 108,000 times as is taught. We don't have to imagine ourselves. There's a tradition that I took my vows in, is that before you can even start your so-called Dharma practice, you must do 108,000 full prostrations, not one after another, but some people take many, many years.
Yeah.
But the point and that's rooted in the Tibetan tradition, not putting down a tradition. But again, the point I'm making is the Buddha didn't teach anything else except an Eightfold Path that any human being who decides to wholeheartedly engage with it can understand what he's doing. But if you don't, if you deviate from it, even in the slightest, and those are his words, he said, the wise know the danger in even the slightest deviation. Anytime we adapt, accommodate, or embellish the Eightfold Path in any way, we've lost the entire path. Doesn't mean we can't come back to it, but we're not going to develop this Dhamma as he teaches it.
The answer to the question couldn't it also be, this is not me, this is not mine, this is not who I am?
Yes, that's the essence of what we learn from the Eightfold Path.
That's the shortcut.
That is. And again, we learn that there's nothing personal. That whole series on the Dhatu Vibhanga Sutta was, I finally changed the title to that to reflect it. The Buddha teaches that there is nothing personal. And think about that, going back to feelings and how we describe ourselves by our feelings. It's because we're taking things that are completely impersonal, completely ordinary, and making them extraordinary and personal. And we carry it around with us, don't we? Sometimes forever. In fact, it often is forever. That's the nature of conditioned mind. In the same way, any practitioner well-versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines perception that is, past, future, or present, any perception that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well-versed in the Dhamma, it would appear empty, void, and without substance. So those are the first three aggregates: form, feeling, and now perceptions. They're all without substance. For what substance could there be in perceptions that are constantly changing? Now, suppose that a person with good eyesight is seeking heartwood. In seeking heartwood, they went to a forest with a sharp axe. There they find a large banana tree. They cut it at the root and remove the top. They peel away the outer skin and fail to find even sapwood. Banana trees are softwood, there's no heartwood in it. to say nothing of finding heartwood. Having good eyesight, they clearly examine the banana tree, and the tree would appear empty, void, without substance, and with regard to heartwood. For what substance or heartwood could there be in a banana tree? In the same way, any practitioner well versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any fabrications that are past, future, or present, any feeling that is internal or external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well versed in the Dhamma, fabrications would appear empty. Notice in this sutta where the Buddha is including fabrications in relation to the heartwood, because any reference to the heartwood is always to the Eightfold Path. So it is through the Eightfold Path that we're able to recognize and abandon fabrications. And that brings us right back to recognizing and abandoning ignorance, where all this begins, ignorance of Four Noble Truths. For what substance could there be in fabrications that are constantly changing? Now, suppose a magician were to display a magic trick, and a person with good eyesight clearly sees the trick. The trick would appear empty, void, without substance. For what substance could there be in a magic trick? In the same way, any practitioner well versed in the Dhamma observes and appropriately examines any consciousness that is past, future, or present, any consciousness that is internal, external, obvious or subtle, common or extraordinary, near or far. To those well versed in the Dhamma, any consciousness, and that consciousness in this sense, again, it's not any grand cosmic unified consciousness. It's simply ongoing thinking rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths. Any consciousness would appear empty, void, without substance. For what substance could there be in consciousness that is impermanent and rooted in ignorance of Four Noble Truths? Seeing these five aggregates clearly, the well-instructed follower of the Dhamma grows disenchanted with form. They grow disenchanted with feelings, disenchanted with perception, disenchanted with fabrications, and disenchanted with thinking rooted in ignorance. And it's the perfect word translated from the Pali, obviously, disenchanted. Because when we are stuck in ignorance, we are enchanted with ourselves and our own wrong views, which is why we cling to them. Because it's what we've created to describe ourselves to ourselves. It's all that we think we are. And often, I would bet every one of you have come up against this when you realize the ramifications of what the Buddha is teaching. At first, it feels like complete annihilation, doesn't it? What's going to happen to me when I let go of all these self-referential views? Where will I establish myself? Another way of saying is that where will I fabricate myself? When you let go of all those fabrications, then you can address the problem of ignorance directly. And what do you do when you address the problem of ignorance directly, framed by the Eightfold Path? You simply recognize it and abandon it. They grow disenchanted with the five clinging aggregates. Disenchanted, they grow dispassionate. Through dispassion, they are released. Released from what? Released from ignorance. With release, there is the knowledge. They are released from clinging to ignorant views. That's an important line. How do we know it? Because we know it. We have the real visceral experience of seeing things as they truly are. And then each and every moment of our life is meaningful because I don't need it to be any different than it is. I haven't decided that this is not what I want and this is what I want. I'm simply present with what's occurring. There's nothing fabricated about that. Through dispassion, they are released. With release, there is the knowledge that they are released. They know that birth is ended. Again, remember the context. The Buddha is not talking about a future physical birth. In this context, we're no longer giving birth to another moment rooted in ignorance. We're no longer giving birth to another moment that supports the ignorance of five clinging aggregates. Birth is ended. The fully integrated life has been lived, meaning integrated with the Eightfold Path, and the path is now complete. They know, here, excuse me, they know there will be no more moments rooted in ignorance. It's a marvelous thing, isn't it? Form is like a glob of foam, feeling a bubble, perception a mirage, fabrications a banana tree, consciousness a magician's trick. When you observe When you observe them and appropriately examine them, it is clear they are empty, void, and without substance. That's the Buddha's teaching on emptiness. It's got nothing to do with some ethereal realm that we aspire to. It has nothing to do with nothingness. Those are usually kind of sold the same way, that there's no such thing as a self, and we should realize the realm of nothingness and emptiness. And this is the Buddha's meaning of emptiness: to be empty of ignorance, to be empty of five clinging aggregates. To anyone who sees them clearly, they are empty of ignorance. Beginning with the body, when seen with profound discernment, as taught by the Buddha, form is rejected and cast aside. Again, it doesn't mean that we no longer live in our bodies. It simply means we're no longer using an impermanent form to describe ourselves to ourselves. And we're no longer using the condition of the body to be a certain way as a foundation for our happiness. I always wanted to be 6'2" and play center field for the Yankees. Form is rejected and cast aside. When bereft of wrong views, the emptiness of form is seen clearly like a magic trick. And that's just what it is, isn't it? An idiot's babbling, such as, I want to play center field for the Yankees, or I'm not going to be happy. No substance is found here. A well-informed Dhamma practitioner, their persistence aroused for what? For awakening. Their persistence aroused should continually view the aggregates mindful and alert. They should discard greed, aversion, and deluded thinking and make themselves their own refuge. How do we make ourselves our own refuge? By discarding or abandoning greed, aversion, and deluded thinking. How do we do it? Eightfold Path. Make themselves their own refuge and take to the Dhamma as if their head was on fire in the hopes of gaining Nibbana, awakening. That's the sutta. Thank you. Excuse me. The sutta is remarkable on many fronts, but in its directness to the problem, to depersonalize what we insist is entirely personal and entirely me, and entirely me as a person, when it's all a magician's trick that I'm playing on myself. I insist that this is me, this is substantial, this is all that I am, and everything that I think about myself and attach myself to, I am now compulsed to or driven to continue to defend. When in fact, all of that is rooted in ignorance. And what's left when all of that is shed? An awakened human being. Someone who knows the ending of ignorance. Someone who knows a calm and peaceful mind that can never be stressed. Pretty good deal, huh? And all we have to do is do just what we're doing. Nothing else. There's nothing extraordinary. And maybe that's, I'll leave it just to make that point, that we're all doing just what we need to do to awaken. By developing an eightfold path, a right meditation practice within the larger framework, and applying that off our cushions as best as we can. And we're all doing it. So, Merry Christmas. Jen, how are you this morning?
Good. Thank you. I really enjoyed this talk today. It was I feel very clear, very released. Just hearing it, just being reminded of how it all works, how we get ourselves worked up over nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm trying not to cling to that feeling, but it feels pretty good right now. So that's about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Lorna, good to see you this morning.
Thank you. Very pleasant sutta.
Yeah.
It's very pleasant to listen to. It puts it over puts all the main points across, but it puts it over very pleasantly that you can relate to, and you can also get the clear picture of how we do associate ourselves with what we feel, what we, all the things that is mentioned, that we do take them more personally at some time, wrongfully. Sometimes it's remarkable how well he knew me. You can, how did he know that about me? You can just marvel at the knowledge that I had, and to put all this together in a form that he could teach and people can learn from. It's really always remarkable to me, that.
Yeah.
I guess if we could just be more mindful sometimes of the big picture of how we are distracted in the moment, which we do time and time again throughout the day. If we could just step back and just see at the moment how we are distracting ourselves and take the big picture into mind. But somehow when you're caught up in phenomena and all these feelings and things, it's hard to see that. It all gets camouflaged and you just get into your own thinking. But I guess, if you could just step back from yourself, get out of your current thoughts, and see the big picture of what the Buddha is describing, that would go a long way towards your understanding and your release in the moment of your fabricated views. But that's difficult to do. It's every class you come to, every sutta you listen to, it just drops a little bit more in there, hopefully. And thank you very much. Another class, but very very useful. Very useful.
To put you on the spot, I would bet that you've had many moments where you felt yourself getting distracted or entangled in the world, and you reminded yourself that this is not me, this is not mine.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's the Dhamma. That's it. That's how it's applied.
And
at the point of contact.
Yeah, more and more I'm getting the knowledge that I am not thinking about anything, that I'm not on
There's nothing self-referencing.
Or I'm not on a story, or I'm feeling and more conscious of that as time goes on, that I'm just not nobody, which is nice.
Yeah.
Which is, I'm not I'm not expecting anything. I'm just happy to go along with who and what and what happens, and being calm, and I think more pleasant to other people, etc., just through being calmer in myself, not pushing against life, but just going with the flow. It comes into a calmness that you learn to appreciate over the time.
That's how the Buddha describes an awakened human being. It's worth everything, isn't it? It's worth giving up all those other things that you cling yourself to.
And it makes you also not so worried about change. I used to get hung up with change. I'm not like that now.
That's another example of a diminishing self-identification with things. You're just not attached to it. But on the outside, and again, you can tell me to move on after. On the outside, nothing has changed, has it? Lorna looks the same, and your life situation looks the same.
But a
But a lot has changed.
A lot has changed.
Yeah. That's another good teaching on what happens when you let go of all these fabricated views. It's just internal.
Thank you, John.
Thank you. Anthony, good to see you this morning. This is your first time in the
Yes.
What do you think?
I like it better in some ways and not better in other ways.
I would say I would say the same. I'm happy here. I'm very happy.
Yeah.
It's nice.
But as you say, we have to accept change.
Yeah.
And I like the parking situation.
I like this.
It's
One-
cozy though.
one
and
floor.
It's nice to be closer I think,
Yeah.
in some ways.
I like it.
So yeah, I love the structure of that story. You know how the metaphors with the foam and the magician, and that common way he weaved into every fabrication, and like the thought popped in my head when I was listening to it is maybe we should be a little bit more like actors, because actors know that they're playing a role.
Oh.
And so they don't get too caught up in it, because the reality is we have to play these roles. We have to have a self to survive, but we don't have to believe it. So actors don't. They play a self and they don't believe it.
Yeah. Yeah, and hopefully you don't take it seriously. You know?
Yeah, and then so and then I had a pretty good experience yesterday actually, where I was able to catch myself, and I could start to feel my heart race and getting my blood pressure going, because I was having a case fall apart on me, and the claims adjuster was making some arguments why she wasn't going to pay me, and I could hear my voice start to raise, and I started to get a little personal, and then I just caught myself, and I backed down and said, "I'm so sorry. I don't mean to get angry with you." And then I was shocked that I had empathy expressed to me by the claims adjuster after I said that. And she said, "I completely understand. You know, I would if I were you."
Wow.
And I was like, wow, you don't expect to get empathy from a claims adjuster.
Yeah.
But I think it's because I caught myself and apologized, because there's no reason to get angry or to raise your voice.
And it diffused the situation immediately.
Yeah. And I think the practice had a lot to do with it, probably most. But I have to think I think Christmas had a little bit to do with it too. Well, because you start to feel there is a little more kindness in the air. So I have to give Christmas its due too. But
Sure.
I think the Buddha and Christmas, Buddha 75%, Christmas 25%. And then I had a wonderful, and it was that kind of a week actually, because I had a couple of cases start to go south on me this week. And I was really getting very distracted by a lot of thoughts and things going on in my cases. And then then it just dawned on me that I just sit there and I imagined for a minute, and I know you probably don't approve of this, but I imagined for a minute I was a mountain, and then I said mountains have to go through storms, rain, snow, heat, cold, sun, dark. And I thought, if I'm just this mountain, and it's all going to go through me. It's going to pass. I'm going to have these storms. I'm going to have the sunny days, and I'll still be here, standing still like a mountain does. And it helped me, and it just kind of like drained away.
I think that's great. I approve completely.
Well, I didn't think you would like imagining in the middle of a meditation, but it helped me get out of a bad situation.
Yeah, no, there's the sutta from the Dhammapada that I'll be teaching on Thursday. The Buddha references mind like a mountain, and the previous part is that a heavy wind to an unrestrained mind will just blow it, obliterate it. But a mind like a mountain, no wind can affect it. So that's pretty good.
Doesn't he also say you're physically like a mountain when you have your legs?
Yeah, that's what. And I imagined, I said, I was
thing.
thinking that exact thought. That even sitting here, I feel like a mountain, because
you should be stable and firm and solid, and your feet should feel like that when you.
Yeah, and your base is wide like a mountain, and your top is narrow.
That is. That's. The meditation position is metaphorical for that. So those that can't do it, no.
It could be a tree. Trees do the same thing.
Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. Becky, good to see you this morning.
Thank you, John. Good to be here. The Sutta is nice. It was nice to listen to it again. I felt that it gives you, it's a great refuge to listen to that sutta. And it, even though while I was listening, I was having sort of I was doing that, what you described when you said, if I'm able to do this, what's going to happen to me? Those thoughts were going through my mind a couple of times. But as I listened more and started to just tinge around the edges of right view, which listening to it kind of brought me closer to, I realized what a great refuge it is. And that there is, that you can do it. And even though you get distracted really badly and you are just almost losing your mind, you can still come back and feel just listening to a sutta or reading a sutta or doing a sit, you can come back and feel that release over and over again. And that's what the practice is.
Yeah.
That's all it is. That's what the practice is. And if you can get to the point where you don't have to work so hard at it because you are getting closer to recognizing what you're doing, to recognizing when your ignorance comes to the fore in a big way.
Yep.
That each little step is going to make that sanctuary and that release and that more prevalent in your life, which is really what you're hoping to have happen.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank you. You put it beautifully. And if someone told you that true happiness lies on recognizing and abandoning your own ignorance, and you didn't know anything else, you probably wouldn't listen to them too long, would you? But when you understand that that's the problem, that you're almost eager to do that, and really participate in your own refuge. This is what we do as individuals. It's not magic. Nobody's making us do it. We don't. And the sutras where the Buddha is saying we're not looking for merit or grace or anything to help us awaken. We just do this practice, and we're participating in our own refuge. It's remarkable. Thank you.
Can I ask a
Sure.
practical question? Are you going to be doing the Truth of Happiness course again this year?
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna. I'll probably begin. There's one or two suttas that I want to get to before. Just kind of concluding what I was hoping to do this year, which was really just to fill that in. We really covered an enormous amount of material. The beginning of the year, I set out kind of a curriculum of things that I wanted to go through and different themes, and we got through all of them as a sangha. And it's really, when I look back on it, the material that we covered, it's really remarkable. I don't know that there's nobody else doing it, but I don't know of anybody that's investigating the Buddha's Dhamma as deeply as we are and gaining benefit. That wouldn't make much sense as a sangha to investigate the Dhamma deeply and nobody gets it, but we're all getting it. And that really is remarkable. So I think I'm going to start either Saturday, January, I think it's the 6th, 5th or the 6th, or definitely the following Saturday, if not the 6th. And then on Tuesday, the 8th, whatever those dates are, or the week right after. But I think that's when it's going to be. So within a couple of weeks, we're going to start the Truth of Happiness again. Yeah, it's always good to review that.
I like reviewing that.
Yeah, and I think as a sangha, because we really have so well established that it's going to be an even deeper experience in those now seemingly mundane teachings, such as shamatha vipassana meditation. Well, now we really know what we're talking about, don't we? Yeah. Andrew, good to see you. How are you?
In reference to something you mentioned earlier, in Buddhist time, if there were a neophyte walking into the sangha and walked up to the Buddha and said, "How are you?" How do you think he would have responded?
Good question.
Oh, he would have. For one thing, he would have instantly understood that the person was a neophyte, and if he had the time and the inclination, the Buddha was a busy guy. That's why he had a lot of other awakened monks and nuns to help teach. But if he had the time, he would sit him down and give him an overview of the Dhamma. He would likely read the person pretty thoroughly to understand just what he needed to say. And if he didn't, he would He would tell him to go talk to Ananda or Sariputta or Moggallana or Sister Kema and begin his instruction. That's what they did. He was much like we do on our retreat. I know I say that when our retreats, I run my retreats to be very similar to what it was likely like during the Buddha's time. In other words, that when you're there as a sangha, you're immersed in the Dhamma and you talk about the Dhamma. So this person would have gotten a very quick and basic instruction on the Dhamma, and then he would continue just like we're doing here too. But it seems like the Buddha gave a teaching nearly every night too. So we're not quite there yet, but that's a good question though. How did you find the sutta?
It's wonderful to hear, and it's like every sutta, in my experience, I have to listen to it again a number of times to really put out the essence of it. But I just have to do that.
Yeah. Thank you. And that's how it is for me. Every time I teach the Phena Sutta is something I've read. I think it's in both of the books, at least the other one, Becoming Buddha. But I probably read it, I don't know, a dozen times. And I always see something else, or I understand it even deeper. That's just how these teachings are so subtly powerful. You never can really plow the depths of them. There's always something else there. It's really remarkable. Even the metaphors that the Buddha used 2,600 years ago, I mean, they have been translated in modern times, but they're still completely applicable today, aren't they? It still works. Liz, good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to be here. I think this is just another good reminder. I know I always talk about how it folds back into itself, but it's a really good piece of information to carry into the holidays.
Yeah.
To remember certain things, heading back into situations where we're truly conditioned.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm thankful for that.
Yeah, Matt and I were on WDVR this past Monday,
Oh.
and she asked, it'd be good to have you, we were on there a few times, she said, it'd be good to have you back so you can give people some tips on how to deal with the stress of the holidays. And the best advice I could give is don't take any of it personally. Easier said than done.
Right.
I'm going to spend the afternoon with the Haspels today, so
Don't fall for the bait.
yeah.
Yes.
It's all,
Exactly. Don't take the bait.
Kevin, good to see you.
See you, John. It's great to review the sutta again.
Yeah.
And it really, today just feels like a retreat. It feels like a insights that people have into the sutta and to listen to the wisdom of other members of the sangha is profound.
It really is. It is. Thank you.
This sutta also, I mean, I think of the annihilation, and it's kind of a paradox. The sutta is about the body and the mind and the aggregates. We don't have to physically annihilate ourselves to get away from it, but we just need to just let them go, just not attach. And I think that's the essence of the sutta. I'm putting that the way I'm thinking it, and when I try to express it in words, it kind of comes out.
No, that was beautiful. That's just it foam on the ocean. It's a magician's trick. There's nothing there, and if there's nothing there, there's nothing that can be annihilated either, except ignorance. And it is like the hearing the Dhamma this way in the setting that we have, not only just the room, the setting of our sangha, is like a retreat every class, because that's what it's about. That's what our retreats are about. I got into a little bit of a discussion with someone online because the Thursday talk, there's a line in the Dhammapada chapter 19 where the Buddha says that it's not by silence that the confused and deluded become awakened. And the reason why is when we're engaging in any type of asceticism, which is really geared towards annihilating, that's an annihilation practice, that type of asceticism, denying the senses, we can't practice a Dhamma, can we? Because the Buddha teaches to practice restraint at the sixth sense base, not to deny the senses. And when we deny the senses, and there's many ways we can do it. We can do it by forced silence, or we can do it by loud music. It's the same thing, it's denying the senses. We can do it by starving ourselves or gorging ourselves. It's still denying our senses. The Buddha taught a rational approach to understanding what it's like to be a person. And it works. It works. I made the announcement about the truth of happiness. There won't be a class on Tuesday because it's Christmas Day, but we will have a class on New Year's Day. In the evening, yeah, Tuesday, January 1st at 7:15. There was something else.
And the Saturday classes are just...
Yeah, we'll have all our Saturday classes. I'm going to get an announcement out very soon, within a couple of days, of our teacher training, which begins next year, just meaning the requirements about attending classes, and then the schedule for our actual teacher training over the summer. And then there'll be a retreat just for those that have taken the teacher training next January at One Dharma Center. I'll get all that out. And I hope many of you, if not all of you, take the teacher training, whether you decide you want to be a teacher or not. It's just a different way of actually engaging in the Dhamma. But then it'll give me a little bit of break as time goes on. Some of you will be teaching classes here and there. So nothing to be afraid of. Where there's desire, there's fear. So all you got to do is teach the Dhamma. And then I'll get the registration out for May's retreat right after the first of the year. A few people have been asking when. I think you could do it now, but I'll make the announcement sometime right after the first of the year.
You have the dates for that already?
Yeah, May 16th to the 19th. 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, May 16th and 19th. All right, we'll finish as we always do with the Metta Sutta. So again, find your relaxed meditation posture. Gently close your eyes, gently close your mouth. And again, take a moment to become mindful of your in-breath and your out-breath. And these are the Buddha's words on metta from the Karaniya Metta Sutta. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace. Let them be able and upright, straightforward and gentle in speech, humble and not conceited, contented and easily satisfied, unburdened with duties and frugal in their ways, peaceful and calm and wise and skillful, not proud or demanding in nature. Let them not do the slightest thing that the wise would later reprove. Wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Whatever living beings there may be, whether they are weak or strong, omitting none, the great or the mighty, medium, short, or small, the seen and the unseen, those living near and far away, those born and to be born, may all beings be at ease. Let none deceive another or despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Even as a mother protects with her life her child, her only child, so with a boundless heart should one cherish all living beings. Radiating kindness over the entire world, spreading upwards to the skies and downwards to the depths, outwards and unbounded, freed from hatred and ill will. Whether standing or walking, seated or lying down, free from drowsiness, one should sustain this recollection. This is said to be the sublime abiding. By not holding to fixed views, the pure-hearted one, having clarity of vision, being freed from all sense desires, is not born again into this world. Thank you all for a wonderful class this morning. Have a Merry Christmas. And please tell your families, I said, I think I know all of your spouses and partners. So wish them a happy holiday from me too.
Thank you, John.
You too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And good luck.
You and Bodie.
Thank you.
That's your family gathering.
I just go and sit cross-legged.